What is up, dudes? That's Bloodieknux here, aka the Gothic Gamer of LV1 Gaming, back with another review here with Lost Epic, and a tale as old as time as the story of humanity fighting against great odds. The tale of David and Goliath, and even the story of Odysseus. What about this tale of humanity having to reclaim what the gods have taken from us? That's the story that kind of unfolds here through Lost Epic. And I recently got my hands on with this wonderful 2D style fantasy RPG, very much a Metrodivania meets Souls-like combat. And I'm going to share with you my breakdown and thoughts here in this review. Now, before we get started, this is your spoiler warning for some of the early story here in the game, so do pay attention to your upcoming discretion. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in with the review. First up, we have the story. In the story of Lost Epic, we learned that the world has been destroyed by mankind. We've built many and caused wars, grew greedy, and completely ravaged and destroyed the planet, so much so that the being known as the Elder God left our world and abandoned us. And because of this here, humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction. However, new gods came to our world. The first of these gods, known as the Fertility Mother, was Hexilia. Hexilia actually birthed the new gods that would come to rule our world and rebuild it. And by that, they really helped to heal the world. Rivers and oceans that were barren now filled with water. Forests that were once burned down and destroyed are now lush again, healing the scars left by us. However, they now have areas that they call their sanctuaries. There were some humans that chose to follow these new gods, abandoning what we had learned previously under the Elder God. And those who chose to follow these new gods were known as the Holy Ones, or the Chosen. They were the only ones allowed to stay in these safe new sanctuaries under the protection of the gods. Those who chose to defy and completely abstain from what the new gods were offering became to be known as the perishing, left to the dying, decaying world outside of these sanctuaries here, with naught but the thought of death awaiting them. However, there were some humans that ended up getting the strength to actually be able to defy and challenge these gods with the ability to use what was known as divine arts. And these beings, these humans, actually became to be known as knights. And the knights chose to fight and take on the gods to be able to save humanity from extinction. And this is actually where the story picks up here, is that our character actually was one of the most recently reborn knights who is now set forth to challenge the gods, just like the others have before us. Now, this is a trope that's very, very common in a lot of stories. It's rather well known, always fighting against a greater odds, defying the gods, wanting to stand up here. But in this one, it's different in the fact of that we caused our own downfall where the gods came in. Here, we had already destroyed our world, we had already ruined everything, and yet the gods are now coming and saving the planet, rebuilding it for themselves and those who they choose to save, and just healing the world for themselves. Yes, they're taking over, but it's also a fact of this is the consequences of our actions and the scars we left upon the world. Now, like many stories, especially many Souls-like and Metrovanias, a lot of the story is actually told through dialogue with the NPCs as well as notes scattered throughout the world. So for those who really want to learn the story of the game, you will take a lot of exploration here. However, for fans of the genre, this is going to be an enticing journey set just for you. As for others, maybe not here, but overall, I enjoyed the story and what it presented as well. While it's not necessarily new per se, it does add its own unique touches that does make it a very standout story. Now for the visuals. in the world of Lost Epic, the visuals are very, very pretty. And I truly mean that. They're very pretty. The colors are vibrant, they pop. They use a lot of heavy, stylized anime style aesthetics here with the way that they designed. Now, that's not a bad thing. I was like, it's just, you know, at certain at certain points they use a lot of heavy dark lines to give detail to the characters, especially when you look at it. Well, if you look at the backgrounds, there's not a lot of detailed sketch lines to be able to emphasize, so that way the world kind of blends in but still pops because of the colors, so you stand out very much from it. And you can tell that there's a lot of that inspiration for that kind of aesthetic, and from having, you know, large armor pieces, a lot of mixed bright colors that are detailed, all of it just simply pops, and it really makes the game look gorgeous and run beautifully. And more than any of that is the designs of the characters themselves, from the NPCs you meet as well as especially the enemies. The enemies are just gorgeous all the way through, but especially the bosses. Like when you first come up against Hexilia, I absolutely loved her design. When you first come across her, the gods feel very unique with the way that they're designed for their areas, and I love that. And more than anything, there's a lot of very wonderful particle effects that are used in the game here, especially from your attacks. So they feel flashy, they have a lot of flair, and it really makes the powers that you use stand out. And everything in the environment just matches the decor, the feel that is trying to show, each having its own very unique aesthetic, whether that's the forests and caverns of Mount Hartle in the very beginning to the waters of Lake Pelgrand. And just every area just has its own unique feel that makes the world feel diverse. Next up is the sound design. The sound design and the background music always go a long way in the game, and it helps to invoke a sense of immersion and wonder, but more than anything, it helps to make the world set a tone, whether it's alive or desolate, setting the atmosphere. And in Lost Epic, it sounds rather muted, and what I mean by that is it's not always trying to be bombastic or resounding like other games. The feel of each area has a certain style, has a certain approach to its music to make each region kind of diverse. And I love that. Yes, it only makes it seem like there's not a lot of music going on, but each area does feel very unique with its background helping to set the feel of the area that you're in. But that doesn't take away from the fact that some of the boss fights that you meet have their own soundtrack, so that way they have their own theme for combat and everything else to really make it sound intense when you're in these fights. Now, along with the sound is the sound of combat, and one of the things here is that the combat sounds a lot more cartoonish. And what I mean by that here is that the combat leans more heavy into that stylized, not necessarily anime, but a little bit more of that stylized kind of action RPG, where the impact is very different from a game that you would see like Elden Ring. When you swing a sword, it sounds like you're swinging a sword, where in this game, especially with all of the divine arts, it's very flashy and it sounds different because the weapons aren't meant to sound the way that you would think that they sound. And that's perfectly fine here because this game is a lot flashier. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more movement, mobility, and a lot of very active kind of style compared to something like that. And it really works in its own right. And I do appreciate and love the work that went into the sound design. And especially, I love the voice acting in the game. The Japanese voice acting provided by the NPCs really helps to make the game feel like it is a living anime. And I love it. I was like, the characters you meet are diverse. Their personality shows in a lot of the way that they talk and your interactions with them. And it makes the world just feel that much more immersive. It helps the overall melody and feeling of the game just pop in its very minimalist approach to its sound design. And lastly, for the gameplay, as I always say, gameplay is king, and this game is no different, and it has a lot of points where it really shines. and it has some points that kind of drag it down for me. And what I mean by that is that the core gameplay of it is phenomenal. It is very much an RPG first and foremost. It is a Metroidvania and very like hardcore roots of its DNA, and it's very much ingrained, along with the increased difficulty that you would expect out of a lot of roguelike style games here. Think akin to something like Ender Lilies, Quietus. This is really one of those games that kind of stand out here, as well as if you're looking for the fact that with that difficulty, you also have the option of increasing the difficulty in some areas, also lowering it for those who want to have more of a casual experience, similar to games like Hollow Knight. As a map that you explore and as you progress throughout the game, you unlock new abilities that do allow you to open up levels of exploration, encouraging a lot of backtracking in the game. Very common in a lot of these style games, offering, rewards, items, other stuff here. But the RPG aspect that really comes into effect is a lot of the crafting systems. You have a very deep growing armor as well as weapon system. So here with the weapon that you can create, you're able to utilize different items that you would use to craft it, and some of those have effects such as attack reduction, defense reduction. Some cases have insta-kill kind of abilities, or you're able to imbue it with elements like fire or lightning. And along with that too is that each weapon has different levels and different upgrades and new evolutions as you upgrade those weapons over time, so that way you're always having something different. You're always able to keep upgrading and taking that weapon that you built here and going further and further with it. And maybe you get new builds, or you find new items that have different effects, so when you upgrade it, you can completely change its entire outlook. Along with the armor here, also increasing a lot of those skills here. But one of the things that makes it a little bit different is that it has a level up system very similar to what you would see in a lot of Souls-like games, but it doesn't work the same way. It doesn't level up a particular skill. Instead, it gives you a skill point that you're able to use in this grimoire that acts as your skill book and opens up a skill tree. You're able to select any open slot adjacent to the areas that you've unlocked. However, there are some unlocks that'll happen randomly due to certain conditions, whether that's completing certain quests, killing a certain number of enemies, or any other certain condition that must be met. And it'll give you hints on what they'll do here or what'll unlock them. So you're able to see that. So from there, you're able to have different starting points on where you want to focus your skills, and allows you to really build out the way you want. So if you want to go full focus on your strength build and increasing just your attack while having nothing else, you're able to do that. If you want to focus on magic and other abilities or stamina, you're able to do that. Increasing your health, making sure you can survive longer, you can do that as well. There's so many different abilities or ways that you can build out your character, as well as over time, defeating certain enemies will also unlock new armors, new weapons, and other things here that will give you more diversity and ways to add to your armament. Now, one of the downsides here and my biggest gripe has to be with the combat. While the game's combat is fun and flashy, at times it felt very inconsistent. And what I mean with that is specifically with the hitbox detection and timing. In games where a lot of invincibility frames, iframes, however you want to call it, take a very key approach to timing, it needs to feel consistent. A lot of the times when I felt like I was dodging at the right times and doing it at the very often the same time, sometimes I would get hit, other times I wouldn't. And especially with the ability that you have is to parry using a basic attack for abilities that can be parried, I would be in the middle of combos using that aspect here, knowing that the attacks that are being used on me can be parried. And more often than not, I kept getting hit still somehow and getting knocked out of that, even though I should have been able to parry it. Or while I'm in the middle of dodging, I'm still getting hit, even though I should have been invulnerable during that time. Another one of the things that really felt inconsistent with some of the timing is the divine counters. And what that is that there are certain enemies, when you're in combat with them, their eyes will flash with a red light, or they'll flash yellow with a exclamation point above them here, where you're able to counter them using your divine arts. And a lot of the time when I would activate those at the right time, I would still end up getting hit. I wouldn't get the counter, and now I would be stuck with having that ability on cooldown when I should have been able to counter it. And especially during the boss fight here with Hexilia early on, I kept activating that, and it consistently would get knocked through, or at other times her telegraphing was very inconsistent with when she was going to use certain abilities and when she wasn't. And that kind of made it really frustrating as someone who's used to playing these games, is that timing and consistency is a big part of the challenge. When it feels like things are not consistent, it tends to be a bit of a major upset, because of the fact that then it feels like I'm being punished not necessarily for my skill or lack thereof, but because the game is not staying accurate to the timing that I was expecting. And more than anything, as I mentioned with the hitbox detection, there was a lot of times where I was well out of the range of certain attacks and was still getting hit. Either I was backing away and they're well in front of me, or sometimes I would be behind an enemy and they would be attacking forward and nowhere near swinging me, and I would still get hit. And more often than not, that would be what gets me killed when I'm well on the offensive here and have a major lead. And sometimes they would lead into criticals that would just stun lock me, knock me out of the air, and then they would just kill me with just hitting me multiple times, even though they shouldn't have been able to hit me in the first time. And this is a very major turnoff for players who love that kind of stuff, because of the fact that if it's not their own fault, it feels more punishing, because of the fact that there is no way to gauge where they are or where they're messing up. Now, overall, I loved and enjoyed my time with Lost Epic. It's an absolute joy to play, and while I may have been frustrated at certain points, I had a lot of fun with the game overall. It's very captivating with the story. I found it intriguing. The visuals were just stunning and breathtaking, and the soundtrack was just absolutely phenomenal. Everything around the game has so much potential, and I really enjoyed what the team did here. Overall, the combat is fun, it's flashy, you're able to build truly strong weapons, and it's always fun when you can get a group of 6 people and just be smashing through them because you're so strong. I was like, that power fantasy that the game really pushes is there, and it's wonderful for fans who like that style of game. So I do want to thank the team over at OneOrEight for providing us with the key for our review here at Lost Epic. It just launched, so you can play it now today on the Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, as well as on PC through Steam. If you want to find more information, you can check out the official Lost Epic website down below, as well as, if you haven't already, make sure you check out our other recent reviews. But I do want to thank everyone so much for tuning in and checking out our review, and make sure, if you haven't already, you hit that subscribe button here and follow the channel for all the wonderful news, previews, reviews, and podcasts and shows that we run here on the channel from the whole team here at LV1. But until next time, make sure you stay tuned, level up, and we'll see you all next time. Later, everyone.